Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Brady Haye Mortgage Team podcast. Thank you again for tuning in to the next episode. Pleased to be joined today with the founder and executive director of an organization here in Des Moines that is a nonprofit called Walk With You. Kylie Collins, thanks so much for joining the episode today.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. No, looking forward to the conversation. Excited to learn more about you, your story. You hear it in every other episode if you're an avid listener, but my number one priority with this is to help build quality relationships with quality people and grow together. So that's kind of the heart behind it. Give you an opportunity to share your story, share a little bit about yourself, and tell the listeners who you are.
Awesome. Yeah. So I'm Kylie Collins. I am the founder and executive director of Walk With You, which you said. Okay. And I am from the Des Moines area. Okay. I went to high school in Ankeny. My parents still live there. I went to school at the University of Iowa, in Iowa City, got my nursing degree there, and, got married, had kids, worked as a nurse in the neonatal intensive care unit. Okay. So really got started right off the bat, nursing school in the ICU, right? Okay. Yeah. There's nothing that felt more stressful in my life than.
All right. Was that always your vision? Did you want to be in the NICU right away?
So when I started nursing school, no, okay. I thought I wanted to do something else. But then I had a 4-hour shadow experience in the NICU. And I will tell you, the people that sign up to let students shadow them are incredible. Okay. Because now being on the other side of it, you have to slow down so much when you have a student, right? They just have like huge eyes. Like, what's going on? Yeah. But I will say that the person that let me shadow her for 4 hours was incredible. She allowed me to really participate in some of the cares that she was doing. And I just had a moment, it clicked, and I fell in love with the NICU.
This is where I'm meant to be. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So started in the NICU.
Yes.
Continue from there.
Yeah. So in the NICU, I quickly specialized in the area of the NICU where we care for the most critically ill infants. And so different NICUs are split up differently. So all of our individual beds in the NICU are in their own rooms. It's not like a huge common space. And then they split it up based on how sick the baby is. Okay. And so I quickly specialized to be able to go to deliveries, to be able to care for the sickest infants. And you can imagine that when you're caring for the sickest infants, you're encountering death.
Sure.
And despite, incredible medical advances and the most incredible minds of people I've ever worked with, sometimes babies die. And it's a frank, hard, cold truth. And I found that, we establish relationships with families in the NICU. They're there for a long time sometimes. And we kind of become their family because a lot of times they can't have a lot of visitors come to meet their children. And so we kind of become a pseudo family. And I would maintain relationships with some of these families. And in doing so, even after their children would die, we would stay in touch, here and there. And families began to share with me and other members of the healthcare team maybe some things they wish they would have known as they navigated those initial days and weeks following the loss of their child. It's incredibly overwhelming. And you have this whole medical team surrounding you, and then your child dies and we're with you through that process. And then we walk you to the elevator and we say goodbye, and then they're on their own. Yeah. And there's truly nothing that really existed, I guess. We'll get into what exists now, but there truly wasn't anything that existed that helped families in that immediate time frame following the death of a child. So there was a huge, huge gap in the support available. And it is the worst feeling as a healthcare professional to not only not be able to save a life, but to not be able to bring any help or comfort. And HIPAA, the privacy rules are there for a very good reason, but it really just inhibits our ability to interact with these families. Absolutely. And so kind of in working, there as a NICU nurse and really wrestling with that. And then, my family moved, we relocated back to central Iowa. And so I wasn't at that children's hospital anymore and trying to figure out what was next. And I worked with a career coach, and I thought that career coach was going to help me figure out which area of nursing I would do next. Okay. And I left with a business plan to create a nonprofit. So,
we'll definitely get into the organization itself, but I want to talk through so that you mentioned the coaching experience and amidst that, I assume, and this is, I don't want to assume, I want to have you share, but I assume they were asking prompting questions, right? To figure out where you were meant to be, where you were called to be, what was next. And I imagine that how they landed on this, or I guess I want to have you share, how did you land on this again? Did it keep coming back to like, this is what I'm passionate about? Kind of share like your experience through that.
Oh, I love this question because I love getting to talk about this. I think more people than we realize really wrestle with what their calling is in life.
Yeah.
It's really hard to find that intersection sometimes between what your calling is, maybe what you enjoy and what your giftings are.
Sure.
Right. And so where all of those things align is that's where the gold is.
Yeah.
And so, there was personality tests. There were, frankly, just a lot of getting to know myself. I had to get to know myself on a really deep level. And the thing that I kept coming back to was saying, what I want to do is help families plan funerals. And I don't really know why. I have always loved interior design and like party planning and like event planning and the aesthetic and all of that sort of stuff was always really interesting to me. And I felt like I was really good at helping coordinate care for people. And not always the best at like making the meal for the meal train, but I can organize the meal train. Like just some of those types of care, some of that type of care for family, I cares for families. I just really found myself drawn to, I just really want to be walking with people that are just navigating this. I feel like my medical background has really helped inform me of what can go wrong. Families don't have to translate medically what's going on with their child. I really just felt like when I would have those conversations with family members of past patients I cared for, that they would share like, we just felt so lost. We didn't know what to do and all of that.
Rightfully
like,
so,
Absolutely. And so honestly, through that experience and just really trying to like figure out, I remember telling somebody specifically, here's what I want to do. And I listed all of these things and I ended that with, but it doesn't exist. So I have to find the next best thing.
Yeah.
But what the career coach really helped me kind of figure out is that if it doesn't exist, what is preventing me from starting that?
Sure.
Is it that I like truly would not be able to do something like that? Does my season of life not support that? Or does maybe I'm not organizationally gifted in a way that would be able to start something from scratch?
Sure.
Or is it just my own fear of failure in the way? And kind of in all of that too, some close family friends of ours, their 3-year-old daughter drowned. And so I really did a lot of those things, helped plan funeral, coordinate photography, get them plugged into grief support, work with the support system on here's what they're going to need, here's what not to say, here's what to say, here's what to do, avoid these things. Like I did all of that very informally. So that kind of helped inform.
Transition it to an actual career.
Yeah.
Love it. So it sounds to me like you had a vision for where this operation could go. It's just a matter of somebody kind of pushing you to pull the plug and do it, which is, I'm grateful to hear that happened. So walk through timeline wise, when did the organization begin? Kind of what was the initial launch of that? And talk through the early stages of how everything kind of got rolling.
Well, I think we are, still in the early stages in a sense, right? As in we're still in our first 3 years of existence. So we received our 501c3 status of being a nonprofit federally recognized in August of 2022. And then we spent, me and just a few other founding people that I had kind of shared this idea with that were all on board. We spent the rest of 2022 fundraising, kind of organizing things, figuring out how families would find us, how we would operate, all of that, kind of getting that nailed down. And then that family I shared a little bit ago, whose 3-year-old daughter drowned, her name is Haye, and her birthday is January 12th. So we launched our services on January 12th of 2023.
Cool. Very cool.
Just another reminder of this is why we do what we do.
The purpose.
It's for Haye. Let's keep Haye at the forefront of things. And no matter how many years pass after Haye dies, like it's still so important to say her name. So we launched services January 12th of 2023, and we're now in December of 2024. So about, 2 full years of operating service-wise, and we have supported 91, I believe, families.
Wow. Wow, what a blessing. Talk through, so obviously families is kind of the main service, but walk us through, what does it look like? When do you guys get involved? How do you get involved? What's kind of the common connection there? What sort of services are you hoping to provide for those? And if anybody's listening, obviously, and would benefit from your services, what would that look like?
Yeah. And I think truly the people that need to hear this are the people that they're not necessarily going through it. They're the people that can help their loved ones that are going through it get in touch, right? It's too exhausting when you're grieving to try to think about any of this.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm sure you've known people in your lives that have lost somebody special to them. Everybody does. It touches every single person in some capacity. And so when that happens, you feel helpless. Well, here's one way that you don't have to feel helpless. Let's help you help your loved one.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's the whole goal. And so, we have different relationships with funeral homes and with hospitals or clinics or churches or small businesses or whatever that looks like for families to hear about us. But the whole point of our existence is to bridge that gap between the healthcare setting where a family knows their child will die or their child has died.
Sure.
And then what has seemed like years down the line when they finally show up at a support group, or maybe the parent finally seeks some counseling after a lot of awful PTSD or some other things have surfaced that have forced their hand to show up to a counseling appointment. And so the whole point of Walk With You is to walk with you from that moment where your child will die or has died, support you through all of those decisions, work with your support system so that they know how to help you, and get you plugged into counseling, support groups, the lost community, grief retreats, age-appropriate resources for maybe the siblings of this child that has died. Like, how do you tell your 3-year-olds that this baby's not coming home from the hospital? How do you engage with your teen that their younger sibling, their only sibling, died in a car accident? Like, how do you have those conversations? Nobody knows. Like,
well, frankly, it's not something you want to plan for either, right? Like, obviously, we don't wish this upon anyone. However, and like you said, you don't want to plan to have this in your back pocket, right? It's not like you want to keep a Walk With You business card in your back pocket just in case I ever experience this myself, right? But what the hope is that people in the world, for that matter, and I guess I want to touch on later what your target market is, how wide you want to go. But the hope is that your brand is aware, and people have awareness of what you guys do, so that if they know someone else that is impacted by this, which, like you talked about, is sort of inevitable, that you have somebody that can step in right away and make you aware of this service that you guys offer to help them navigate this tough time. So
before we launched our services, I surveyed a lot of bereaved parents. Some newly bereaved, some 20 years out from the loss of their child, and some of the most common regrets or things they wish they would have known were they wished they had more photos or any photos of their child. And they wished that somebody helped them navigate the whole process and helped them find the right support sooner. Instead of the burden falling on themselves to find their own support. And so, as I was trying to figure out, okay, I know I want to work in this sector of child loss, but I don't want to reinvent the wheel. Let's look at what other organizations are doing. Let's look at what's being done well and figure out where the gaps are. And then that way we can bridge that together. So, that's why we don't offer our own support groups, or we don't have licensed counselors on our team to provide grief counseling, or, we don't have the child life specialists to tell the children, to tell other children, grieving children, what's going on. Like, we don't have some of those supports because that exists elsewhere. And so we refer onto those, and, if people reach out to a support group the week following their child's death, then that support group can tell them about Walk With You. Well, here's who can help you kind of navigate these initial things. So,
you think that's ever something that you would do down the road? Like, do you envision growth to that point, or would you rather kind of stick to the point where you have resources that you can refer to, let them handle their expertise, and then you guys can kind of focus on what you guys do?
I don't know, if I'm being honest.
Which is okay.
I think we have some of our shorter term goals, things that we want to happen before that. So one of our services is called a bereaved parent mentor.
Okay.
And so we pair up parents virtually one-on-one, like another mom that has lost a child a few years ago, pair them up with a newly bereaved mom,
Sure.
Same with dads. And then they kind of navigate that process. But we want to expand that to offer that option to connect grandparents with each other,
Sure.
to have some sort of way that's appropriate to connect siblings through like a pen pal relationship or something like that. And so I feel like we have all of these other goals of how we want to expand our services to really support the whole family in this timeline before we would start thinking about doing support groups. Or I think we would aim more towards having events that we put on with a lot of our families and connecting families in the community before we would offer our own support group.
Totally get it. Yep. And like I said, and I've said this in other episodes before, but like sometimes it's more important to focus on the task at hand and what your qualities are and what you're good at, right? And let others kind of handle their piece of the puzzle.
It's hard to say no.
Yeah.
Especially I think when you're an entrepreneur in general, like you just want to do all things. Like that's your spirit, right? You're like, I want to start this and this and this, and this is a great idea. And you're so visionary.
Of course.
But the work has to get done. And if you put too many things on the plate, they won't get done.
Yep. When I've said before too, I remember vividly, and I'm fortunate to be able to learn this lesson young, but when I was in college, I remember I was involved in every activity and I was on the leadership team of everything. I was on the golf team and I had all these things, right, that I wanted to do. And I really found this like purpose where it's like, all right, well, I feel value from being involved in all these things, right? And then I quickly discovered that as packed as my schedule was between school itself, all these organizations, I really was giving 20 to 25%, if that, to everything I was involved in, instead of giving 100% to one or two things, right? So if you can really focus in and dial in on what you guys are really, really talented at and have referral sources that you can refer out to that are great at their craft as well, then it really becomes a win-win, right? Because at the end of the day, your number one priority, and I'm assuming this after the first 17 minutes of our conversation, but your number one priority is to make an impact, right? And you want to make a lasting impact on someone who is going through something unimaginable that you want to try to make better, right? Like that's kind of the vision behind it is what I would guess, right? And so if you can perfect your craft on what's on your plate and have referral partners that are great at what they do as well, that's a win-win, right? To relate it to something that I do in the mortgage world, there's a reason I only do mortgages, right? And then I have an incredible insurance agent, real estate agent, financial advisor, to name a few referral partners that do their craft incredibly well, probably similar boat where you handle what your team is responsible for and provides. And then you have other sectors that you can refer to and help them kind of navigate. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And I think the misconception in the nonprofit world versus, as contrasted to a for-profit business is, of course, there is still competition.
Sure.
And that feels really ugly. And so the ways that we can mitigate that and truly just, again, elevate people who are doing their craft really well and not reinvent the wheel. Like we have created some incredible relationships with other organizations that do their thing really, really well. Mm-hmm. And so we can lift each other up that way because we're not doing the same thing. You know, you're not trying to, well, I'm just going to watch what you do for 3 years and then I'm going to take that and do it. Yeah.
Totally.
There isn't a need for that. And so if we can collaborate together, I just think that's incredible.
I love it. Yeah. We've talked about a few already, but highlight from a high level standpoint, services in general. What are we offering to those that come to you? I guess what would be, let's just name 3 to start, I guess. And if you have more, feel free. But what were some highlights of some services that you guys are offering? Yeah.
So we operate in 3 phases is what we call it. So anticipatory loss, which is before a child has died. Not everybody applies to that. Not everyone knows that there's a diagnosis for an illness or anything, but some people do. So we have in that, we offer listening visits. We help kind of plan end-of-life moments, capture memories with photography, and kind of create sometimes, depending on how long we have, sometimes there's like 5 more months of a pregnancy where they know their child won't live after delivery, that we have a lot of time to do some advanced care planning, meaning figuring out the funeral home that we will choose, that sort of thing. So anticipatory loss, and then we go into new loss, which is from like the moment a child dies through the funeral home process,
Okay.
and so I say funeral home instead of funeral service because not everybody has a service.
Sure.
But everybody has to work. Well, there's one exception, but everybody pretty much has to work with a funeral home.
Sure.
With a body.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so in that new loss phase, we also offer photography and videography for capturing visitation, funeral service, graveside burial, kind of that sort of thing.
Okay.
And we also do a lot of guiding families through the funeral home process, helping them plan a service that reflects their child's legacy, that honors their family really well.
Okay.
Financial aid during all of that, that's all kind of part of it.
Okay.
And so then that's new loss. And then we go into enduring loss, which is from the end of the funeral home process through the rest of that first year following the death of a child. And in that, we have 3 big services. And those are compiled list of resources, support system equipping, and bereaved parent mentorship.
Okay.
So the compiled list of resources, we find them grief counselors that accept their health insurance.
Okay.
We find them support groups that are applicable for their loss scenario. Because there's support groups for cancer loss, from a traumatic loss as far as maybe substance overdose or car accident, or there's specific loss for stillbirth or SIDS, right? There's different groups that kind of offer different forms of support. So the counseling, the support groups, sibling resources, grief retreats, events in the community, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Mm-hmm. We compile that list so that families, even if they don't want it right away, they can refer back to it. And they don't have to figure out, well, where are the support groups in my area? Or is this one even going to be a good fit for me? We kind of get them that list. And then the support system equipping, working with the support system, the loved ones of the parents. Mm-hmm. Parents are not at this. It's a virtual video call where we help the support system think through how to support their loved ones.
Got it. Okay.
Very tangible, and also dispelling myths about grief, kind of talking about the reality that grieving parents face, what to do, what not to do, that sort of thing. And then the bereaved parent mentorship, which we did touch on a little bit, but just, pairing up a parent one-on-one with another parent who's further out from their child dying, but is still, they're walking
figuring it out as well. Yeah.
Absolutely. Like, you never get over the loss of a child. Like, you just don't. Like, it's not possible. What you can do though is you can have somebody walk with you through it. And so the rest of your life is a new reality. And there's the old version of you before your child died. And then you're trying to figure out who this new version of you is going to be. Yeah. And that bereaved parent mentor can serve as a source of hope that, honestly, what parents say when they're in those initial days and weeks following the death of a child is that they can't even imagine their life in a month. They can't even imagine like a week from, like, it is so daunting, the intensity of their pain and their grief and their ache. Yeah. And so to see somebody who's still alive, frankly, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years later is that gift of hope. And they can see that there is some sense of normalcy in their lives.
Right.
They're working again. Yep. They can parent their children. They can go on vacation. They can do some of those things.
Yeah. Are those people that obviously are volunteering to be that mentor? I guess you can call it a mentorship. Are they people that you've worked with in the past? Are they through a different organization? How do you get somebody that is willing to step into that role? Because that's got to be challenging, Yeah. To want to be that person is interesting, I guess. I'm just curious.
We haven't had anybody yet who we've walked with sign up to be a bereaved parent mentor because, again, we're still in that second year. And it's for sure our rule that you have to be at least 1 year out.
In order to step into that role.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
What people will tell you about grief is that first year you're in such a fog. And then as that first year ends and that second year begins, the fog lifts a little bit. Okay. And so the pain feels more acute.
Sure.
If acute, not cute. Yeah. So make sure that's clear.
Thanks for clarifying.
But the reality sets in.
Okay.
In that second year. I don't ever want to say like 1 year's harder than the other year, but that second year, some people have said it's harder.
It's different, I'm sure. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, ideally people have been, about 2 to 3 years out before they sign up for that. But we have licensed counselors that screen these parents.
To make sure that they're a good fit.
Absolutely. Yeah. Because again, sometimes people might be 8 years out from the death of their child, but they've never gone to counseling or never gone to a support group. And
Of course.
when they talk about their child, it sends them right back into that, and they have some PTSD, and it's just not appropriate yet, you know? And so we help them get plugged into support and make sure they kind of get the support that they need. But we have an application form on our website. We have mentors all over the country that just kind of stumble upon it on social media, or they know somebody, or maybe they, you know, we have like some founding board members, or just some families from the hospital setting that hear about, you know, so kind of all sorts.
That's very cool. Well, for anybody listening, if that's something that you've experienced and you feel called for that, I'll be sure to link that in the description as well, amongst other links to access your guys' organization, obviously. Quick touch on the team. So obviously you play a big role in this. I'm sure you're not able to do it alone. What's the crew looking like?
Yeah, we have, as of right now, about 60 volunteers.
Very cool.
I am the only staff
for
now, but in January we have someone else coming on staff, which is incredible.
Stay tuned for that.
I'm so excited.
I feel like it'll probably have happened by the time this is released. So if you want to leak their name, you're probably able to do that.
Yeah. So Faith Smythe she's currently serving as our associate executive director. And she just does that in a volunteer capacity, but she'll be on the payroll next year.
Congratulations, Faith, for your new position. Excited to see what impact she can make. I would guess by the time this is released, I have another episode that'll go out before this one. She'll have already started full time with you. So
yeah, she. I won't tell her story. We know each other from high school. We were acquaintances, never really friends. But she has an incredible story of how child loss has really affected her personally and her family and in friend groups. And she is all the things that I am not, and vice versa. But we still have that overlapping like ability to be with people in those moments.
Sure.
But, so the people that are initially meeting with families, doing those intake calls, going to funeral homes, kind of guiding them through that process, that role is called bereavement support advocate.
Okay.
There are 3 of us that do that.
Okay.
I'm the full-time one, and then we have Faith helps with that, and then another volunteer, her name is Haye, help with that. By the end of 2025, we have a goal of having 5 total of those.
Okay.
So if you're interested in that, that's another plug, right?
There we go.
Yeah.
If you're interested.
Yes. And so bereavement support advocates have not experienced the loss of a child themselves.
Yep. It's feel called to help.
It's too much of a place to operate in with too many triggers if that's your own reality.
Yeah.
So it's just other people that work in other areas of loss that want to, nurses, social workers, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then from there, we kind of have 2 tracks as far as what volunteers do. So we have them on the organization side, doing marketing, social media, website, fundraising, finance committee, diversity committee, that sort of thing.
Okay.
And then we have the track for family services. So that would be what the bereavement support advocate is. That would be where we have our researchers that compile those resources lists, our bereaved parent mentors, the people that lead the support system sessions, kind of that sort of thing. So, and regardless for all of it, the only one that requires you to be a bereaved parent is the bereaved parent mentor.
Of course.
But, loss is not a prerequisite for any of this. Like, you don't have to experience a loss to be on our board of directors, none of that. So, there is a place for everybody to get back. If you have extra hours in your week, or we have volunteer roles that are as little as 2 to 3 hours a month.
Yeah. Love it. As Walk With You grows into 2025, let's talk vision, growth. What does that look like for you guys? What's kind of the goal?
So we have a goal of walking with 100 families in the calendar year of 2025. We have the goal of increasing the number of volunteers kind of in each of the family services category.
Okay.
We have a lot of people wearing multiple hats, and it works for now. But as we grow and serve more families, the frequency of these new referrals with families will increase. And we just want to make sure that, nobody's burning out. So more support system, equipping session leaders, bereaved parent mentors, the counselors that screen our bereaved parent mentors, that sort of thing. So we want to see more growth there. And then we want to have a director of fundraising. So we just don't have anybody in that role right now. We have about 5 people in that role that share that role, including me. So, so on the team side, I would say that we don't have a number on the total volunteers that we have, but we want to increase the dads that are bereaved parent mentors, and then the fundraising, and then the the other team members working with families.
Love it. Location wise, obviously you're in Des Moines, Iowa, correct?
Correct.
What does that look like from both a services standpoint / growth standpoint? Is it your vision to stay local, or do you have a desire to branch out? What does that look like for you?
So we actually do help families all over the country.
Okay.
So we have helped families in 20 or 21 states.
Okay.
In just the continental US. So a lot of our services can be done virtually. It's just phone calls and helping them call the funeral homes, kind of walking them through that. A lot of emails and phone calls with parents and then their support system.
Sure.
And the Braves parent mentors, the support system equipping sessions are all done virtually anyway.
Yeah.
And so we can do a lot virtually. I will say, as we've moved through, 2023, we were very spread out.
Sure.
As people just didn't know that much about us. But now we've really developed relationships with, all 3 local hospitals in Des Moines.
Mm-hmm.
And, they know about us. They're able to share families with us. And, we've really narrowed down a lot more in central Iowa.
Yep.
But I'm working with a family in eastern Iowa right now. It happens.
I would say it's the same thing for me, right? Like I'm able to provide the same level of service thanks to technology wherever I am, right? Because I can do things virtually and I can have conversations virtually. And the same thing for you guys is I'm sure you're able to make that same impact regardless of where you are. So I have to take the opportunity because I know the power of social media. If anybody's watching this video and you guys need someone who can make an impact on you, if what you're listening to resonates with your heart, be sure to comment on this because, again, that's the goal of this, right? We want to make as much of an impact as we possibly can. So if you know someone who's dealing with loss, needs someone in their corner to help navigate what these next steps looks like, be sure to comment on this and connect with the Walk With You organization because I can already tell you that they've made an impact on me and I'm not even directly involved. So that's just, I feel called to do that because I know the power of social media and I want to help you guys grow. And even if it's not me writing you a check today, I'm confident that saying these words and having people view this video can help you guys. And that's what I want to do.
I really, really appreciate that. Yeah, we do have a goal of having a representative in each state.
Yeah.
Maybe not, we do desire to have a physical office in Des Moines someday. Sure. We all operate from our homes or in the car or at funeral homes. But we do want to have somebody in each state that can spend time networking with some larger hospitals and have that. So absolutely, that's a goal. Yeah. That is a goal. And nobody likes to talk about money, but we are a nonprofit. Yeah. So we are.
You need some help, don't you?
Absolutely. Yeah. This is December. We're currently in our end of year giving campaign. We're about 50% of the way towards our goal. Okay. Our goal is $50,000 by the end of the year. Okay. And we know that's an ambitious goal and it's okay if we don't meet that goal, but it's a goal.
We set it right.
Yeah. We gotta have a goal. But yeah, so that's always, we are starting to work with a grant consultant firm in 2025. So that will be helpful to kind of get into the grant world a little bit. But yeah, these families deserve to have equity in their grieving experiences. Yeah. And we've worked with families that don't speak English, that are not from this country, and that have found themselves here navigating the death of their child. And the resources that it takes, it's pretty astounding, like working with lots of organizations with translators and financial aid and all of the time that takes. The time is the service. Yeah. That's what Walk With You really specializes in. And we cover costs of photography and videography. We help pay towards funeral, burial, cremation, headstone costs, counseling costs.
And listen, I'm sure you'd probably give the world if you had it to give,
right? I would. We so would. Yeah.
So that's a calling right there. Like, hey, if anyone has the ability to help this guys out, I obviously will link that as well. Where can people find you, I guess? Is there a website you want to direct people to? Is there where can people reach you guys at? Yeah, so we have a website, www.walkwithyounonprofit.org. You can find links to our donation platform on there, links to volunteer opportunities, links to explain our services, and then there's actually stories on there too that families have shared. I'm so glad you bring that up. It's such a great transition because that's actually where I want to take kind of the last few minutes we have together is I'd love to have you share because I could tell the moment you walked in how passionate you were about the few experiences and people you've gotten to impact, I should say. And listen, we don't have to get into specific names to protect their rights, whatever you feel comfortable to share. But I do think that heartfelt experience that you've had, it really will make an impact on those listening as well, to hopefully have them feel called to reach out to help you guys as well. So wherever you feel led to take the next section, that's kind of where I'd love to finish things off, if you're cool with that.
Absolutely. Sharing stories, that's the really special part. That's what people resonate with. So a few come to mind. The first one kind of deals with, we touched a little bit on the financial equity piece in grief. So we had a family that we got connected with about 2 days after they delivered their son. Okay. And they were told that they would have to choose cremation because they would not be able to afford a burial for their son's body. And they had kind of come to terms with that. They were like, okay, like this is what we have to do, I guess. And when they got connected with us, I could tell that they were not fully set on cremation, but like somehow they believed that they had to do it. And so I was kind of, explaining some of their options. Again, you can't share too many options. It's too overwhelming. Of course. But we kind of were talking through how we can get a free casket.
Sure.
There's 4 other organizations that we work with routinely in Iowa alone that help cover up to thousands of dollars towards funeral, burial, headstone costs that people don't know about. So again, that coordinating of support piece, there's so much that exists, but families don't know how to find it. And so we were actually able to get the funding for this family, and they were able to choose a body burial for their son. Wow. Which again, there is no right or wrong way to do a body burial or cremation or a combination of the two. But what that family wanted was to bury their son's body. Sure. That's what they wanted. And because they have the support in the timely manner, they were able to choose what they wanted. Again, you can't undo a cremation. When it's done, it's done. And so that's another aspect of that early support changes the entire trajectory of somebody's grief experience. Yeah. So that's one. I think another story that really hits home for me, I guess it's a combination of the stories, but when we work with refugee families or families that just don't speak English, and we collaborate a lot with, I'm going to name drop them, Des Moines Refugee Support. There you go. They're incredible. Okay. What that nonprofit does for the refugee population in Des Moines is insanely amazing. And so they have a lot of interpreters that speak lots of different languages that we've been able to, use on group phone calls and group text threads with families, email threads. And again, this is a population that would fall through the cracks. But recently, we were able to work with a family that didn't speak English, and their daughter was 1 day old when she died. And the mom had just kept referencing like pizzazz and glitter and sequins when thinking about like the outfit that she had chosen for her daughter to be buried in. And so I was able to propose this idea of, would you like to sprinkle glitter on your daughter's gravesite when you bury her? And she was like, what? I hadn't even thought of that, right? Yeah. But again, those are little touches that mean the world to these families. Yeah. And again, we coordinated with Des Moines Refugee Support. They delivered a Thanksgiving meal to this family. Yeah. We helped find the financial, the aid, and the time that we spent with them. It's those really nuanced moments that's Walk With You in a nutshell. No two families receive the same kind of support. It's so nuanced based on each family's individual makeup, what their belief system are, their culture, their needs. And when we can collaborate with other organizations to really help support them holistically, like that's where it's at. That's so cool. Wow. I mean, I don't even know how to put this into words, but this is such a new experience to me. Obviously, transparency for everyone else that's met her. I'm meeting you for the first time today, right? But I'm so glad that we get to have this conversation. I get to learn more about the impact you're making because, like you said, it's not something you ever wish upon anyone to have to go through what you guys deal with. I'm fortunate because I haven't experienced it, but if there's anything that I can learn from this is that regardless of what you're dealing with, having someone in your corner who cares about you and wants to help guide you through it is what matters the most, right? Yeah. You can't make it better. Everybody has to come to the table and throw away that preconceived notion that they're going to say something magical that brings comfort and makes the situation better. That has to get thrown out the door. We can't make it better. We can't give families the one thing they want, which is their child. Right. But what we can do is walk with them through all of it. The presence of people is the gift in these situations. And so whether that's walk with you or whether you know somebody else experiencing the death of somebody else in their life, like your presence, that is the gift of comfort. That's what they need. You can't make it better.
Yeah. Just remind everyone that they're not alone, right?
Absolutely.
Like they've got somebody there for them if they need them. So this has been incredible. I always like to kind of finish off these conversations by giving you the floor. Is there anything else that we haven't touched on that you want people to know about the organization, about you as a human being, anything else? And don't feel pressured to bring anything up, but I always like to kind of open that up as one final touch before I get to my favorite question of the day.
I'm excited for the favorite question of the day. No, I think the one thing that I'll kind of leave on is whether it's a child, a grandparent, a parent, a friend that has died, say their name and remember those special dates every year, birthday, lost day, anniversary, whatever that looks like. Remember those days, reach out to those people that have lost their loved ones and say their names, tell them you're thinking of them. That little act helps them know that they're not alone in their grief. Every parent's worst fear is their child being forgotten. Yep. Truly it is. And so the least that you can do is say their child's name. So yeah, that was what I would leave it on.
I love that. I love that. Thank you for sharing your heart, for sharing your organization. As I said earlier, if anyone has interest in learning more about you guys, connecting with you to volunteer or needs your service, whatever it is, I'll be sure to link everything down below so they can find you, follow you on socials. I'm sure you have all of that good stuff.
Instagram, Facebook. Yep.
So I'll be sure to tag everything below. Last but not least, and I gave you a little bit of a heads up, but I leave all of my guests on my podcast with one more important question, is where's your favorite chicken wings you've ever had?
Hands down, the Vine.
Really?
In Iowa City.
I've been to the Vine. I think I've only had their burger, though. I don't know if I've had their wings.
Their wings. The location that's in, I think it's technically a Coralville address on the strip. That's their biggest one.
I've been there.
Oh, whenever I get the chance to go back to the Vine in Iowa City, I do.
Such a good spot. Awesome. Well, that's another one to add to the list. It's unique. So thank you again for joining me. This has been another episode of the Brady Haye Mortgage Team podcast. Kylie, thanks again for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Chatting with you again.